Good evening, everybody. I hope I'm audible clearly and my slide is also visible. Can anybody please confirm?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So, for anybody who's joining the problem solving session for the first time, sorry for the disturbance. So I am Sharmishta Majumdar. I am the PMRF TA for this course. I am pursuing my PhD from IIT Jodhpur, and this course is the maternal infant young child nutrition, as you all know, and this is being taken by Dr. Rupal Dalal from IIT Bombay, right? So today we'll be going through the different topics that you have come across in week 8, and week 8 it doesn't have a lot of information to grasp in, but the major two videos that I am sure that you already must have gone through are: number 1, the guidelines for complementary feeding, and number 2, what are the personal hygiene parameters that needs to be. Please excuse me for 2 minutes. Yeah, sorry about that. So, as I was saying, so we'll be going through the guidelines of the complementary feeding and also the different parameters that are there regarding the personal hygiene while making the food. So, it is always not the mother who's making the food for the child, right? There are a lot of people who will make food for the child. So these things also need to be told to all these people so that they can take care of the different food handling parameters, and also the rules related to the preparation of the food and the storage of the food. So after preparing and after feeding the child, so are you able or are you allowed to store that food, or what you do with that food? So I have deliberately linked the YouTube links that these are the recorded sessions that you have gone through in the NPTEL portal, but I have deliberately linked them here as well. So in case you are going through the presentation, it will be easier for you to just go back to the video and you can just skim through the different guidelines there. So as I said, there is not much of technical information that needs to be remembered, but the different common guidelines that needs to be kept in mind. So I think we can just go ahead with our questions. So if you remember, we had started our first class with something called as NHFS data, right? So does anybody recall what is NFHS? What is the full form of NFHS?
National Family Health Survey.
Yeah. So please excuse the typo. It's NFHS. So National Family Health Survey, right? So National Family Health Survey, it is a data which is being taken by the Ministry of Family and Health, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And as we have already gone through these data in the first lecture, if you remember, we have studied about the NFHS 4 and the NFHS 5, right? So does anybody remember what is the time span for the NFHS 4 data? I'm audible, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, I think, 6 to 7 years.
Okay. So
Generally, it is supposed to happen once in every 5 years, but this time it got delayed.
yeah, so ideally it is a span of around 3 to 4 years, if you say, very specifically. What my question was, which year is specifically the data of which year is the NFHS 4 data? Like the year. Okay, so let us just recapitulate. So the
I think
NFHS, yes, yes.
2014 15.
Yeah. So it is around 2015 and 2016, which gives us, yes. Yes, so 2015 to 2016, which gives us the data related to the NFHS 4, and then we have the most updated data, which is NFHS 5. That is the data which has been calculated in between 2019 to 2021, right? So let us go to the question: which Indian state showed the highest rise in introduction of complementary feeding rates by NFHS 5? So NFHS 5 data, can anybody tell me which state might have shown the highest rise in introduction of complementary feeding rates? Yeah, you can guess. Please go ahead.
It's Meghalaya.
Okay, okay. Any other guesses? Okay. So please read the question again. Which Indian state showed the highest rise? Okay. So let's go and have a look at our answer. Okay. So if you can see the panels on the right hand side in the image, you can see there has been a comparative data which has been given for both the NFHS 5 and the NFHS 4 data, right? So if you go according to the question which says which state has shown the highest rise, so that means in between the yes.
The difference between these two is
Yes,
Himachal Pradesh.
yes. So, as we can see, the highest rise. So, if we consider the NFHS 4 data, we can see that in Tripura, in NFHS 4 data, the complementary feeding rates were around 13.6%, right? As you can see that the gray bar which is showing the data of the NFHS 4, so that is only 13.6. But as compared to that, the complementary feeding rates have increased to at least 53.1% in NFHS 5. So according to the question, this says the highest rise. So you can see that Tripura has shown a highest rise of around 40%, from 13 to 53%. So in between the years 2015 and 16 to the years 2019 and 21, you could say that there has been a massive rise in the complementary feeding practices that have been employed in Tripura, right? So the answer to this question is Tripura, but I would suggest all of you to go through the different data. In the first session, I had also said please go through the NFHS 4 and the 5 data very carefully as to the stunting rates, the malnutrition rates, the anemia rates, and also regarding the rates which are there for exclusive breastfeeding and complementary feeding, right? Please go through the state-wise percentages which are given, and also what is the overall percentage of India in each and every case, right? Okay. So here, as we can see, that Tripura shows the highest rise. And I think a lot of you had said Meghalaya, right? So if we consider Meghalaya, so Meghalaya has a considerable similar kind of a situation if we consider both NFHS 4 and NFHS 5, right? So Meghalaya was around 67.4%, and there has been a slightly decrease in the NFHS 5 data, which is around 66.8%. Okay. So please go through the data sets which are available. Again, I would repeat, the statistics are very boring, but the statistics are required for getting the exact, the real world scenario. So please go through these NFHS 4 and the NFHS 5 data. Okay. So we'll move on to our next question. Which of these are important indicators of young child feeding practices? So option A, introduction of complementary feeding at 6 to 8 months of age. Option B, diet adequacy. Option C, both of the above. Option D, none of the above. So anybody?
C is the
Option C.
Right. So as all of you have said, option C. So both of the above, that is introduction of complementary feeding at 6 to 8 months of age and diet adequacy. Can anybody tell me what is diet adequacy? What do you think diet adequacy means?
Age-specific introduction of foods and diversity of foods.
Yeah, you are correct. But like if we want to tell it very specifically, what do you think diet adequacy is? If we consider the terminology.
Amount of food.
Yes.
Quantity and quality.
Yes, the quantity, quality, amount of food, everything is correct. If we consider the diet adequacy, it is one of the most important indicators and something which is known as minimal adequate diet. You must have come across the acronym MAD, right? Minimal adequate diet. So this is very important, right? So there are several, various indicators which are given by the World Health Organization. So according to this question, introduction of complementary feeding at 6 to 8 months of age, very important. And number 2, diet adequacy. How much of food that you are giving to a child of a specific age. So yes, you people have rightly said that. So that is the answer, that both of the above, right? Now, so as I was talking about the different indicators, if anybody is interested, you can go through this piece of document which is available in the internet. You can find it, and this document has been modified, and this is a 2021 version, right? And this talks about the different indicators which are used for assessing the infant and young child feeding practices. So whenever we are assessing something, there has to be some parameters, right? On what parameters will we judge whether it is being done properly or not? Whether share link, okay. I don't have the link at the moment, but you can just type this and you will get it in Google. In case you don't get it, I will provide it, okay? So yeah, so the parameters on which it will be decided, like okay, whether the child is getting adequate food or not, whether the child is being properly breastfed or not. So these are different parameters which has been designated by the World Health Organization, right? So let us now see what are these different parameters. So there are some complementary feeding indicators that has been designated by the World Health Organization, and as you can see, there are these indicators are the introduction of solid, semi-solid or soft foods, then the minimum dietary diversity, minimum meal frequency, and all of these, right? So you can go through this document and it will be informative, and you can get to know as to how these parameters are utilized to check whether the child is being fed properly or not. So the parameter that we are talking about here is the minimal acceptable diet, right? So in complementary feeding, that is the feeding which is being given to children from 6 months of age to 2 years of age. So what is the minimal acceptable diet? So if we consider what is a minimal acceptable diet, so if we go through the definition, ideally for breastfed children, it is receiving at least the minimum dietary diversity and minimum meal frequency for their age during the previous days, right? So as you can see, there are two words again here, minimum dietary diversity, which is MDD. You can see it is also one of the parameters, right? And number 2 is minimum meal frequency. So minimum meal frequency, if you see here, MMF. So these two are also important complementary feeding indicators. So our minimal acceptable diet indirectly depends upon these two, that is minimum dietary diversity, as you can figure out from the name, diversity. What are the different kinds of food that you're feeding the child, right? We have studied before that there are different food groups that needs to be given to the child. So whether or not you are feeding the same kinds of food to the child, or you are giving the diverse groups of food, right? So that is minimum dietary diversity. Number 2, minimum meal frequency. How many times are you feeding the child? What is the frequency with which you are feeding the child? So all these will indirectly or directly impact the minimum acceptable diet, right? So as we can see, minimum dietary diversity. Yeah. So as we can see, if you consider this image, I am sure all of you have already seen this image. We have gone through it. So these are the different food groups that the child needs to be given. Okay, these are the absolute indicated food groups which cannot be. None of the food groups can be missed out from the child's diet. So as you can see, the children of 6 to 23 months of age, basically the complementary feeding food group. So it is being said that the minimum dietary diversity. So what we are talking about is what is the minimal requirement. If the child gets 8 food groups out of all the 8 food groups, nothing like that. It is the ideal situation. But what if the child is not able to get that, right? So the minimum is at least 5 food groups. Okay, so the child needs to get at least 5 food groups of all the 8 food groups that you can see here, right? So the first, if we consider our breastfeed to be our first food group, so you can see there is the breast milk, we have the grains, roots, tubers, we have the pulses, then there are milk products, paneer, curd, etc. And then there are fishes, poultry, organ meats, and other kinds of flesh foods, right? Then we have eggs. Then there are vitamin A rich fruits and vegetables and other kinds of fruits and vegetables. So these are all different kinds of food groups which are very necessary for the child's yeah. So very necessary for the child's overall growth and development, right? So now, as we have discussed the minimum dietary diversity, we can also talk about the minimum meal frequency, right? So as we said, now we know that what kind of food needs to be given to the child. But this is also important how many times we need to feed the child, right? So as you can see, these are the WHO recommendations. So as they have said, it is 2 feedings of solid, semi-solid or soft foods for breastfed infants aged 6 to 8 months. So I won't go into much details of this minimum meal frequency. So these might be a bit different from the things that you have studied in the, in the videos. These are just for references. If anybody is interested to, explore the literature which is available or other documentation. So as I have said, this is a WHO documentation which is available. You can always go and have a look at it. Okay. So
I just wanted to share, as you told about this, I went into Google. As soon as we type this, the first link comes. And the second link is the downloadable PDF format.
Right.
With just one click, the document is easily downloadable.
Yeah, you can download the document. Just see that it is a 2021 document, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a 2021 version. You can easily download it. There's no issue. Anybody who's interested, I'm just giving you the references so that you can just go. In case you are interested, you can always download this, right? Okay, so yeah, I guess there is no. Are there any doubts regarding this? No, right? Okay. So I'll just move on to a piece of statistics that we have here. So as we can see, this talks about the minimum adequate diet, right? So this data is again showing the different comparison between the NFHS 4 and the NFHS 5 data, right? And we can see that out of all the Indian states, it is just Meghalaya which has a coverage of over 25%, right? So if you see all the states, they are all below 25, 23.5, 13, 24, 23, 24, 19, 9.6. So if you consider the NFHS 5 data, it is just Meghalaya which is above the 25% band, right? And again, if you consider states like Assam, Assam is at 8%, then again Mizoram, then Telangana, Nagaland, and Jammu and Kashmir. You can see that as compared to the NFHS 4 data, there has been a considerable decline in the NFHS 5 data, which shows that in these states, the requirement for the minimal adequate diet, which is there for the child, so that is not being met, right? So again, please go through the NFHS 4 and the NFHS 5 data, and remember the lowest ones and the highest ones for just for the purpose of the assignments and the examinations. Okay, so we'll move on to our third question. Complementary feeding should be initiated at the completion of, I hope by now everybody knows the answer.
6 months.
Yes, absolutely correct. So it is complementary feeding, it should be initiated at the completion of 6 months. Okay, so this is just an addition. Please remember, it is not started from the 6th month, but it is started after the completion of 6th month. That is when the baby is already into the 7th month, right? So as we have gone through this in a lot of lectures, when the baby is born, it is important that the breastfeeding is started from the first hour of birth, and then the period till the 6 months should be a period of exclusive breastfeeding, and then from 6 months from the completion of 6 months, that is from the 7th month, the baby now has got requirements other than additional than the breast milk. So that is why the concept of all the other food groups come into the picture. Why now the baby also requires other foods apart from breast milk. So complementary feeding, as I have just discussed, it is the infant's need for, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, this complementary feeding part, no? There are so many mothers with preterm babies, they get confused.
Okay.
So what they do is they say that my baby is 2 months preterm, so I still have 2 months to go to start complementary feeding. So they end up waiting till the baby turns 8 months and all.
No, so ideally, if we are considering about preterm babies, so of course that age, preterm babies, the maintenance and the the requirements would be different. But of course, the 6 months cap, say why we are saying 6 to 8 months of age. So that is a range from which the complementary feeding should be started. So you might have heard about a lot of people starting complementary feeding very early, say 3 or 4 months of age. So that shouldn't be done, or very late, say a year of age. So if it is around 6 to 8 months of age, that is a range, an adequate range from where the mothers can start the complementary feeding. So this calculation would be, the calculation for the preterm babies would be a very, exceptional area where every calculation will differ. But ideally, as we have discussed, from the time of birth, this is the sequence through which the breast milk should be fed, and it is around 6 to 8 months of age, which is the ideal time for starting the complementary feeding. So was I able to answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. So it is a range. Like when we say 6 months, it doesn't mean the day the baby just has completed 6 months you start. It is an ideal range. So it should be started from that time. Okay. So yeah. So as I was saying, the infant's need for energy and nutrients, they of course will start to exceed. So from whatever was being provided only by the mother's breast milk. So now that will be sufficed by the other kinds of food along with the breast milk. So hence, complementary feeding should be initiated at the completion of 6 months, but of course the range is 6 to 8 months of age, right? Okay, so we'll move on to our so as you can see, there are some advantages and some disadvantages of complementary feeding as well. So, of course, we all know that if complementary feeding is not started at proper time, the child will suffer from malnutrition and the child will not be able to gain proper weight, and it will it might lead to different deficiencies of macronutrients and micronutrients. So if complementary feeding is initiated at proper time, so it will prevent malnutrition, it will prevent all these deficiencies, and also anemia. As we know, anemia is a major deficiency which happens in children, be it iron deficiency anemia or be it the vitamin B12 deficiency anemia. So if the food is given to the baby and these different kinds of nutrients are being supplied to the baby, so then these kinds of deficiencies can be prevented. Then again, we also have the different kinds of if you just can recall, we had studied about the different nutrients, the type 1 nutrients and the type 2 nutrients, right? So type 1 nutrients, they are essential for the metabolic functions. Type 2 nutrients, they are essential for the growth. So if all these nutrients, the macronutrients and the micronutrients, they are being supplied through the food along with the breast milk, so from the 6 months of age, there will be proper growth and development of the baby as well. So these are the advantages. But then again, what are the disadvantages? So as we have just discussed, the two important parts of today's lecture or the week 8. So number 1 is the guidelines for complementary feeding, and number 2 is the hygienic practices. So hygiene practices, they are of the utmost importance, because if the food is not being prepared in a hygienic way, if the food is not being given to the baby in a hygienic way, so that might lead to different foodborne diseases. So the child might have diarrhea, the child is if the child doesn't have a potent immune system, in a very strong immune system, so that will lead to different kinds of adverse situations if the food is not prepared or given to the baby in a clean environment or in a hygienic manner. Again, it is very important to choose the specific kind of food. As we have discussed, there are different groups, and we know that these different groups, they are rich in different nutrients, right? We have studied about carbohydrates, fats and proteins. So these are the macronutrients. So they are giving energy. Macronutrients, they are giving the energy. So the baby needs energy, and apart from that, the baby also needs the different kinds of the nutrition which is being given through the vitamins and minerals. So all these kinds of food groups should be equally and adequately given to the child. So please remember the importance of complementary feeding and why it is indispensable. And whenever we are telling somebody who doesn't have access to the information that fortunately we have, we need to tell them that these are the advantages and disadvantages, and we also need to motivate them to practice the specific hygiene, the hygiene practices, to employ those hygienic ways in preparing food and also feeding that food to the child. So we'll move on to our next question. Fruits are added to the baby's diet at first.
False.
False.
False. Yes.
False.
Yes. So I'm sure all of you have already gone through the assignments, and it is nice seeing that you people are giving the correct answers. So yes, false. So can anybody tell me why, what is the usual sequence in which fruits are given to the baby? Anybody?
Fruits are given at the last because they are sweet, and once we don't give sweets till the age of 2 years. Salt till the age of 1 year, so we don't give nothing to be. Fruit should not be mixed with any food because that sweetish taste. After that, babies may not accept other food.
Yeah.
Though mothers feel that it is very good, rich in vitamins and all minerals, but ideally food should be given last.
Yeah. So ideally fruits should be given last, but of course fruits should not be entirely negated till 2 years of age. So you yes, please go ahead.
Fruit also has fructose, which is not very good for baby. So it should give like a dessert.
Yeah. So, correct. So, as you have said, the fruits need to be given in proper amounts at the end of the, the diet, at the last. So, you have correctly said that fruits are sweet, and if we introduce the sweet taste to the child, then they have a tendency of, developing this sweet taste, and they might also be drawn towards the sugar rich food. So, very correctly said. And one more reason why the fruits need to be given last, rather, I would say why the other food groups need to be given first, because now in the growth phase, the child needs a lot of energy, just as we had discussed. So, the child needs to be given all these protein, carbohydrate, and fat food optimally, so that the child can get the specific amount of energy, because these are all energy giving food, right? So these are the macronutrients. So you need to give food, obviously not in high quantities, but in optimal quantities, where the child will get proper kinds of fats and proteins and carbohydrates. And then along with that, it should be the fruit should be added, because fruits have the minerals and the vitamins, and they have the different foods have the antioxidants, like we have. Okay, so which vitamin acts as an antioxidant? I think you had a question like this in the previous.
Vitamin C.
And
Vitamin E.
right. So vitamin E is a very potent antioxidant, and yeah. So okay. Yeah. So yes, so fruits are also a very good source of these antioxidants through these vitamins, right? So the fruits should definitely be added to the diet, but of course, as you all have already mentioned, what are the reasons that it shouldn't be given to the baby at first, right? And yeah, so before the fruits, the different other food groups also need to be sequentially introduced to the child. So we'll move on to our next question. Which food group should be present every day in a baby's diet till 2 years of age? Anybody with the answer?
Option 2, food group 2.
And what is food group 2?
These are the growth food.
Magnesium, then potassium.
Okay.
So which are the growth factors?
Yeah,
Nutrition,
please go ahead, Shekhsana.
The basic proteins and macronutrients are there.
Food group 1, which are pulses. And option C.
Okay,
Food group
so
C.
I will just help you out to answer this question. So whenever they are mentioning about food group and it is talking about a baby's diet till 2 years of age, please remember that the baby is supposed to get 8 food groups, right? We have discussed about it, and there are different food groups. So I have just shown you, if you can recall. Yeah. Can you see the different food groups here? Is the slide visible?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just move on to the question. Let us get it here. So, if we consider the baby needs to be given 8 food groups, food from specifically 8 food groups, right? So, if we consider, as I had told previously also, the breast milk to be food group 1. So, we do not have an option food group 8, so we can eliminate the the numbering which has been done in the picture. But please remember, just for the matter of the information, that there are 8 food groups which are essential for the child, right? So number 1 is the breast milk. Number 2, there are the pulses, different kinds of pulses, that is dals. Then we have the potatoes or tubers, which are rich in carbohydrates. Then we have the milk products, paneer, curd, etc. We have fish, We have the the meat options, the chicken meat, then eggs, and then we have the vitamin A rich fruits and vegetables, and then we have the other vegetables and fruits. So now if I ask what is the answer, I think it would be not confusing for you all, right? Or is there any confusion?
No. We understood that food group 1 is breast.
Yes. So out of all these food groups, there is one food group which needs to be given to the child every day, and that is the breast milk, right? So as we had seen that a minimum of 5 food groups need to be given to the child, right? So sometimes it might happen that it is not possible to give the child all the food groups, but the minimal should be 5 food groups, and among those the one which is necessary and it should be given all throughout and which has no exception or no substitute, that is the breast milk. In case of, obviously, if there are some cases where the breast milk cannot be given, of course the animal milk can be given as a substitute. So we'll move on to our next question. What should be the consistency of the food given to a 8-month-old baby?
Option
From
A.
option B.
Option A, mashed
Mashed or lumpy food.
Soft, chunky, nutritious food.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So let us see the answer.
lumpy.
Okay. So please do not get confused. After the completion of 6 months, so the 7 month at the at the verge of 7 months, so in the 7 month the baby is supposed to be given mashed or lumpy food, right? So as you can see in option A, the 7-month bar requires a mashed or lumpy food. Then now the baby can is able to eat, or there is a little bit of advancement. So in the 8-month-old baby, you can give soft, chunky, nutritious food. So in case of 7 month, it is mashed and lumpy. It needs to be soft so that it is very easily chewable and digestible by the child, because there is and the teeth have just started coming. And in 8th month, it is soft, chunky, nutritious food. And in the 9th month, can anybody tell me what should be the consistency in the 9th month?
Ma'am, finger foods.
Right.
Soft food.
Yes. So in the right. So in the 9th month, the baby should be given soft finger foods. So please remember the different kinds of consistencies of the food that are given at different times, at different ages of the child, right? So 7 month, it is mashed and lumpy food. The 8th month, it is the soft, chunky, nutritious food. And 9th month, it is the soft finger foods. Now, since it is 9 months, so the baby is able to chew on it little by little. So based on how, what is the age and now whether the child is having the tooth or not, so obviously based on that, the consistency of the food will change, right? So the answer is soft, chunky, nutritious food. I hope there is no, yes, somebody raised a hand.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask if they're asking at the given to a 8-month-old baby, will that mean in the 8th month or after the completion of 8th month?
No, during the 8th month. That is the 8th month, not completion of 8th month.
That means a completion of 7th month, but
Yes.
in the 8th month.
Yes, the ongoing 8th month, that is the age.
Okay. Thanks, ma'am. And this is another
Like
question.
7 months, 1 week, 7 months, 2 weeks. That is the right. That is the age, right?
Sorry?
7 months, 1 week, 7 months, 2 weeks.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
the right? Okay.
Ma'am,
Yes.
there's another question. Like in the previous slide, you showed us the different food groups. So I
Yes.
wanted to know how are the foods are grouped? Like in number 2, circle number 2, proteins and carbs are grouped together. So I wanted to know why are they grouped like that?
Okay, so yeah.
Chana is there and some grains are there.
Right. I think, I mean, this basically shows the nuts and grains. and they wanted to show the fats and based on that. So I'll just show you. Yeah. So can you see the list here? So this list is advocated by the World Health Organization. And these are the groupings. These are the specific groupings of the food. So you can follow this.
Okay. So, ma'am, is there any scientific reason why they have grouped it like that?
Yeah.
Or like just for convenience sake?
No, there is a scientific reasoning, because whenever you see these kind of food groups, so there are the specific kind of macronutrients or micronutrients that you can get from these groups, right? So say some food group will be giving more of protein or more of carbohydrates, or some specific kind of micronutrients. So that is the way that has been grouped. Honestly, I won't be able to tell the specific, regulations as to how they have been grouped, but the WHO says that these are the different groups as to as to how they have been distributed. But definitely, it should be the requirement, or what is the, the source they are providing. What kind of macronutrients and micronutrients they are providing. So that is accordingly made into these groups.
Okay, ma'am, in complementary feeding, suppose we include number 3, it's like mutton, chicken, fish, something, and number 7, like number 3 will provide only proteins, and number 7 will provide vitamins, and like how is it?
Yeah, apart from the macronutrients also, there will be micronutrients in those foods, right? So if you see the number 7, we can see the vegetables and some fruits. So here it is the minerals, the micronutrients which are there, which are being clubbed together. Then again, in fruits and vegetables, it is also the vitamins and the minerals which are being clubbed together.
Okay.
So
Okay, ma'am. If somebody chooses to give only vitamins, then child might get protein deficient, no?
yes, definitely there has to be a proper balance, and that is why there is a specific sequence as to how you are giving the food, right?
Okay.
That is why this is called. Of course, we all know about a balanced diet. So as we adults have a balanced diet, the child also needs something like that, right? We can't keep on giving the same kind of food to the child. We can't keep on giving only vitamins to the child. So the child needs to get both. As I'm saying, macronutrients. So the macronutrients, like all carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and then micronutrients. If you remember, we have studied in the first, the second and third sessions that these are the different minerals which are the growth nutrients. So these also have to be given to the child to ensure that the proper growth and development is happening. It is not that the mother keeps on giving only one group.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah. Anybody else was asking something? No, right? Okay. Okay. So we'll move on to the next question. What is the ideal time for the baby to initiate being the part of the family meals? Okay.
1 year. 1 year.
Right. So 1 year or 12 months. So as we have gone through how the stages of the food, the consistencies of the food changes for the child. So when the child reaches the 1 year landmark, so of course the child has developed teeth which can help the child to eat on the solid foods, or eat on or feed on the the food that the family or the adult members are having generally. So this is an important so this is an important time frame at the 1 month age or the 12 months, where now the baby can be started giving food like the entire family, right? So we'll move on to our next question. How many meals should be given to a 7-month-old baby per day?
It
Two
says
times.
2 meals.
3 meals.
Yes?
Two
Option
meals.
B, 3 meals.
Okay. Anybody else?
3 meals.
Okay. So as we know, when we are starting off, we start with one meal and then we graduate into 2 meals. And then now when the child has crossed the 6 months lap, so now the child is given more meals. So at 7 month old, the child is given, very rightly said, 3 meals, right? So now if this child when becomes 8 month, so what do you think would be the number of meals that needs to be given to an 8-month-old child?
4 meals.
4 meals.
4 meals. And what would be how many meals would you give when the child attains 1 year of age?
5 meals.
Right.
Are you
Yes, 5.
3 full
So
meals and 2
snacks?
snacks. 2 snacks.
sorry.
3 full meals,
Yeah.
3 full meals,
Right.
and 2 snacks.
Correct. So please remember, it's very important to remember the graduation as to what are the nutritional requirements of the child and how it can be and how it can be fulfilled with the increasing number of meals. So when the child is small, so that is the requirement, and hence this is the specific number of meals. And now when we have a 7-month-old child, so it is 3 number of meals. And likewise, when the child now can easily go and have food which the adults take, so now the number of meals is graduated to 5. So please remember these numbers. Again, the next question: what should be the quantity of food per meal for a 12-month-old baby?
Full cup.
Full cup, correct. So if we,
Full.
yes,
Full cup, ma'am.
yes, full cup, correct. So as I have said that this is not, full of technical terminologies or technical information, but it is more of general guidelines or general, information that we know, but sometimes we fail to implement. So this is very important that we remember that these are the nutritional requirement of the baby and this is how it is being fulfilled. So very rightly said, for a 12-month-old child, it would be a full cup, right? And for a child who is around 7 to 8 months of age, it will be around half cup. So we'll move on
The
to
cup. What is the cup size? 200
Yes.
ml or
Yes,
150
the
ml?
cup size is around 250 ml. So the next question is, how can a mother identify whether the baby has any food allergies?
Option B, introduce one food at a time before combining them.
B is
Option
the
B.
answer.
Option B.
Yes, correct. So as all of you have very rightly said that it is option B, that each and every food group should be introduced separately so that it is easier to figure out whether the baby has any allergy to any food group or not. So just not for the sake of the assignments or the exams, but I think that we can also continue to have this information. We can also continue to keep on implementing so that there are a lot of people around us who do not have knowledge regarding this, who do not have the access to this knowledge, so that we can spread this exact these exact information to help people like them. So please keep on referring to the previous sessions as well, so that it is easier to connect all the information, and that is how we can go forward with all these information, right? So yes, very rightly said. Introduce one food at a time before combining them. Next question is, some babies do not have access to breast milk at all. Apart from giving food from the remaining 7 groups, what should be added to their diet? Okay, so before even reading
I
the
was
question, I have
extremely
got the
confused
answer.
with this, it's so confusing because 7 groups, milk would have been added by in that 7 groups. So, it's so confusing with the age group of what the age would be the child's.
Okay,
So this is
so
very tricky.
please do not get confused. Okay, just read the question carefully. Some babies do not have access to breast milk, right? So here, if breast milk is not there, that means the baby is being given food from the other different groups. So that is fine. Now, what would be the substitute of that breast milk? Now the question is asking you what is the substitute. So as we have studied that the animal milk is a good substitute, but of course because of the deficiency of the casein digesting enzyme, it is difficult to digest for the babies. But of course, if there is no other option where breast milk is not available at all, then the best option would be the animal milk in this case. So as you have correctly said that it is 500 ml of animal milk and 2 extra servings of meals per day. So this 2 extra servings of meals per day, it can be from any other food group. And of course, as I said just a couple of minutes back, it shouldn't be that the same kind of food group is being repeated. If you give vitamin today, you are keeping on giving the same kind of food for the entire month. It shouldn't be like that. So all the food groups, they are being given as we have also seen that there are specific time intervals in which these food groups are being introduced, and how all these food groups are giving in combination. So please keep in mind that the food groups have to be given in combination. So yes, for the sake of this question, it is 500 ml of animal milk and 2 extra servings of meals per day. Okay. But definitely in a practical, if we consider the practical purpose, like this question doesn't have the age of the baby, right? So based on that also, the practicality will, it will depend on it. So just for the question part, yes, it's 500 ml of animal milk and 2 extra servings of meals per day. So we'll move on to our next question. Unhygienic complementary feeding practices may cause dash in babies.
Option B, diarrhea and vomiting.
Okay.
Option D, all of the above.
Option D, sorry. Yeah.
Yes. Please do not be in a hurry.
Yes.
Read all the options. Okay. So the answer is all of the above. So of course, we all know that if there are unhygienic practices, so that might lead to, the baby developing different kinds of diseases. So of course, the baby has a subdued immune system, and hence the baby is more predisposed to these kinds of diseases. So it may be foodborne diseases which might lead to diarrhea and vomiting. And also the baby can get super added infection that might cause cold or cough, right? So yes, this is very important, where we need to tell the women in different economic scenarios or different socio-economic situations, where they need to be told that okay, these are the hygienic practices that you need to maintain and why you need to maintain. So this is very important if you need to keep your child healthy, and this is how you'll be keeping your child healthy, right? So yes, the answer to this question is all of the above. So we'll move on to our next question. Type, consistency and amount of food given to the baby primarily depends on
Baby's age.
right. So as we have discussed, whatever food we are giving, how much food we are giving, for how many times we are giving, excuse me. So that all depends on the age of the child. Please do not get confused with the options like baby's height, baby's weight. It is the age we have discussed, right? So at 6 months of age, at 7 months of age, at 8 months of age. Yeah. So what are we feeding the child? So which food group we are feeding the child? What is the consistency, right? We have just talked about the mashed and lumpy type of food. Then again the different soft finger foods which are being given at 9 months, and also the amount. What is the amount of food? What are the number of servings which are being given, right? So the correct answer is baby's age. We'll move on to the next question. Thin consistency food given to a 7-month-old child will lead to?
Poor weight gain.
Okay.
B, all of the above.
All of the above.
All
Option
the
D.
above, low immunity, all the above.
D, all of the above.
All the
Right, right. So, of course, if we do not give the proper amount, consistency definitely will come from the amount of food which is being given, right? So, if there is more of water in the food, if the actual nutrient is less and the
It's option A, poor weight gain.
yes, yes. That is one of the correct answers, but also please go through all the other options. Yeah. So as I was saying, if the mother is unable to feed the child with the proper consistency of food, and there is more of water in it, definitely the child won't be able to gain the specific amount of weight that he or she is expected to gain while those formative months, right? So there will be poor weight gain, and of course the child won't be able to develop that immunity, right? So now the child, since the child requires more of these food other than breast milk, so it is imperative that the child also develops the immunity. But since the low consistency food is being continuously given to the child, so the nutritional requirement will not be fulfilled, and hence the child will become a sickly child, a weak child, and then there will be low immunity. Of course, these terms are all synonymous. So hence the consistency, as we have just studied in the previous question, the type, the consistency, and the amount. So these three are very important parameters which need to be told to, say, young mothers or new mothers when they are feeding their child, because when they are carrying out the complementary feeding, many might have a concept that, okay, I am feeding, I just need to feed this thing to the child, right? But they also need to be told that this should be the specific amount, or this should be the specific consistency, and this should be the specific food group which needs to be given to the child. So yes, the answer to this question is all of the above. We'll move on to our next question. What kind of water should the utensils be washed with for baby food preparation?
B, boiling.
Boiling water.
Yes. So we all know it is boiling water. Yeah. So the ideal scenario of washing the utensils which are being used for the preparation of baby food, they should be properly and thoroughly cleaned with boiling water to ensure that there are no germs or no kind of contaminants there on the utensils. And then after cleaning with boiling water, they should be properly air dried, and they should be wiped with an unused clean cloth and kept covered. So when we are reading this, we think that, okay, these are very trivial things, we know and we will keep on doing it. But of course, when we go into the actual practice, so sometimes in spite of knowing these, we are unable to do it, right? So it is also a matter of self motivation, and also to motivate others that these are the specific guidelines that need to be followed. So if you follow it very carefully, then this is the good expectation, this is the good outcome that you can expect from the growth and development of your child, right? So these are please go through the video that is there for the specific preparation and the handling of the food, and it has got all the specific points. So we'll move on to our next question. Visible pink flesh or juice inside or outside meat is a sign of what?
A. Uncooked food.
Right.
Option A.
Right.
Option A.
Right. So whenever I am not sure how many pure vegetarian people we have here, but whenever we are dealing with non-vegetarian food, say meat or fish or anything of that sort, so they have a tendency of if it is not properly cooked, so say the mussels, the fish, the raw fish or the raw chicken, it is pink in color, right? And if it is cooked properly, so it will become whitish. And this visual indicator is very much important for people who are not acquainted with say non-vegetarian food. There might be people who are trying non-vegetarian food for the first time for the sake of their children. So this might be important, this visual indicator, so that they do not they do not mistakenly feed their children the uncooked food. So of course people, non-vegetarian people, of course they'll be knowing, but there might be a lot of people, as I've just said, they might explore non-vegetarian food just for the sake of their children. There might be even situations like that. So it is important to make them understand that this is a visual indicator, right? So of course visible pink flesh or juice, the answer to this question is uncooked food. We'll move on to the next question. Why should the baby be made to sit upright while feeding? Anybody with the answer?
It's B. Prevent choking.
Option B.
Prevent from choking.
Correct. So as we know that whenever the child is being fed, it is to be kept in mind that the baby is kept in an upright, straight position, and also the baby, it's a very common scenario that we see, that the baby is running around here and there, and the mother is also running behind the baby trying to feed the baby. But that is not a very ideal situation. The baby shouldn't be in a continuous motion when the baby is being fed. So the ideal position where the baby is made to sit upright, of course, so that it can prevent choking. So we'll move on to our next question. Uneaten leftover baby food can be stored for how much time?
It should not
B,
be
4 to
stored
6
and
hours.
discard immediately.
For 2 hours.
Correct.
2 hours.
So yes, anybody else?
Yes, B.
Okay. So here we are talking about the food which has already been partially eaten by the child, right? So it is advocated that any food which has been eaten by the child, it shouldn't be stored for later use. So as we can see, the baby's saliva can induce the contamination, and it might happen that if this food is again given to the child, there might be a super added contamination from the atmosphere apart from the baby's saliva induced contamination, and this might lead to adverse effects. So it is always advocated that if there is leftover baby food, leftover solid foods or any kind of mashed food, so these foods should never be stored. They never should be stored and reused. They should be discarded immediately, right? So the answer to this, please do not get confused. We are talking about the uneaten leftover baby food, so it should not be stored and should be discarded immediately, right? Okay. So I think somebody was saying 2 hours, right? Yeah. So please, I think you might have
Confused.
Yeah, you might have related that to the residual milk that we were talking about. So, if we are considering the residual milk which has been, fed to the baby, the breast milk can be stored for 2 hours and then it can be, given. But of course, leftover food, it should not be stored. And as we have just discussed, right? Okay. So these are pretty straightforward questions. If the baby food handler has any cuts or wounds, what should they not cover it with? If the baby food handler has any cuts or wounds, what should they not cover it with?
A new cloth.
Okay.
Option B.
Okay. Anybody else?
None of the above.
Okay.
None of the above.
Okay, let us go through the question again. If the baby food handler has any cuts or wounds, what should they not cover it with, right? So if we consider...
B, use wet cloths or bandages.
Yes. So if we consider the options a new cloth, so there is no harm in using a new cloth, right? Option B, used wet cloth or bandages. Definitely used, number one, used thing, it will increase the chances of more infection. And number two, wet. So as we all know that any wet thing, any moist thing, it increases the chances of bacterial contamination, right? So used wet cloth or bandages should never be used. And none of the above obviously doesn't make sense, and they should not cover it. This option also doesn't make sense because whenever the baby food handler is preparing the food or preparing the food or giving the food to the child, obviously the cut or the wound should not be exposed. So they should definitely cover it, and it should be covered with an unused, dry and clean cloth. So it is very important that even if it is a minor scratch or minor cut or wound which is there in the area which might have chances of getting in contact with the child's food, it is definitely advocated that the person covers the wound with unused, dry and clean cloth or bandages, right? So we'll move on to the next question. In how many days should a new nutritious food be added to the baby's diet?
Option C.
Every fourth day.
Option C. Fourth day.
Correct. So as we have seen, there are different food groups and we have extensively discussed about it today. Excuse me. So we have discussed about the different food groups that are there and why the food should be given in combination to the child. So the new food group should always be introduced every fourth day. So as it is being advocated, it is always introduced at every fourth day to the previous food. So that will help the child to maintain a balance between the acclimatization of the previous food and also the new food which is being introduced. So it will not be like that the baby is made to have a greater tendency towards only one kind of food. So there will be a balance for the child where he or she will be able to eat all the food groups that are being sequentially and systematically introduced to the baby, right? So every food group should be introduced at a fourth day interval from the previous food group, and they should be given in a proper combination, right? Yes, so every fourth day is the answer. Next question. How much water should be given to a baby while complementary feeding?
Option A.
Okay.
Option A.
Okay, so let us go through the options. Option A says 30 to 60 ml twice a day. Option B says 50 to 100 ml twice a day. Option C, only breast milk should be given, and option D, only fruit juices should be given, right? So if we consider the scenario of complementary feeding, we know that the child is already getting some amount of breast milk every day. And apart from that, there is also requirement of water, because water is also one of the 6 groups of nutrients, right? So carbohydrates, proteins, fats, minerals, vitamins, and water. So water is also an essential nutrient that needs to be given to the child. So apart from the breast milk which is being given, the child can also be given water for around 30 to 60 ml twice a day. And preferably, what do you think should be the ideal time for giving this fluid to the child?
Half an hour before the lunch.
Yes. So ideally, the child can be breastfed, or the water can be given 20 to 30 minutes before or after meals, right? Yeah. So
But we can also give in water when the baby demands it. No?
yeah, that is definitely, if the baby is demanding water or the situation demands water, then of course you can give that. But that is this is an ideal situation. I mean, this is a required requirement. This is an minimal requirement which is needed for the baby. But say if a situation is there where the baby has choked in food, right? So obviously you have to give water. So those are exceptional situations where you're giving. But apart from that, these are the minimal kind of requirements that need to be given to the baby, right? So this is 30 to 60 ml twice a day, right? And as you
Actually, the question is also confusing. It doesn't say minimal requirement. So it varies from a 6 months child to a
yes
24 months child.
yes, that is correct. But if you again go through the options, you will see 50 to 100 ml twice a day. Only breast milk should be given, only fruit juices should be given. So none of the 3 options they stand corrected, right? So of course, if the baby is on complementary feeding, only breast milk is not given. And we wouldn't really advocate that the baby should be given fruit juices. And also 50 to 100 ml twice a day is not a specific amount which is being advocated. So if you exclude the options, so the answer becomes 30 to 60 ml. Yeah, but definitely that is one point. The question also doesn't have the specific age or anything mentioned. That is also there. Correct. Yeah. So yes, so the breast milk, or I mean the fluids, the breast milk or the water can be given 20 to 30 minutes before or after the meal. So this was the last question for today's problem solving session. And as I have said that the week 8 content, I mean, it's really very simple, but it's difficult to, follow it in practice. So I would suggest all of you to go through all the, recorded lectures that are there, and also the problem solving sessions that we have taken and the study material that has been uploaded. So there are a lot of overlapping concepts. So if we kind of keep on recapitulating it, so I think it will be easier for all of us. So any more questions?
Ma'am, one clarification
Yes.
we needed actually. I have gone through this 9th week material.
Yes, okay.
The same videos are there, but questions
correct.
are different.
So I have gone through the material. It is indeed similar, but this can only be solved from the NPTEL team's side. So a lot of you have raised the query. So please wait for a couple of days. I think they'll be checking that. And I'll also put a note regarding the content which is being there. So do not worry, it will be solved, I guess.
The solutions for week 7, no? In that, actually, I just wanted to check again, but there is no answers. It's only the question and options.
Okay, so all of these, these kinds of logistic queries, I think it's better if you put it directly on the NPTEL, portal. So,
How do you put that?
okay. So, when you go to your, okay, just give me a minute. I have a question. I'll answer this and get back to you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So Ananya Bajpai is asking, mother is worried about the child becoming a picky eater. What can she do to prevent this behavior when starting complementary foods? Include a variety of taste before sweet foods. Start with sweet food, start with watery food, and start with oils. Yeah. So the answer has already been shared by Go Green. Include a variety of taste before sweet foods. So as we discussed in today's problem solving session also, that before introducing sweet food, it is also very important to introduce the other kind of food groups so that the baby doesn't develop a tendency to, only have sweet foods. So, of course, the answer is include a variety of taste before sweet foods. I hope your query has been cleared. Ananya Bajpai. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, yes. So, as I was saying, in the NPTEL portal, where you get to see all your assignments and everything. So, if you see on the tab on the upper right hand, you can see ask a question, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just found that now. Ask a question and
Right.
new
So,
conversation,
yes, so
right?
you can put all your queries there. If you have queries related to any, material, any course material or any kind of topic, you can put your queries there also. And you can put these logistic issues also there. So,
Okay, I
obviously,
understand it.
yeah, so obviously these logistic issues will be taken care of by the NPTEL team only.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
so,
you.
yeah, okay. Anything else?
The complementary feeding practice is a behavioral change indicator. So I'm not very sure actually the behavioral changes are can be improved so soon. That the first slide what we have seen like Meghalaya, Tripura, they have shown a 40% or 45% improvement there. I'm still very confident of accepting the data because of course NFH is data, but generally in the 5 years time a maximum of 10 to 15% can only be improved there. Such a big change is difficult to accept it.
Yeah, I understand your point entirely, but of course, what we can do, the minimal that we can do is go by the data. But of course, this is just a representation of the scenario that exists. And I understand that, an increase of 40% is really striking. But of course, if the data is there, then we need to go by the data, right? But it is just a representation that okay, this is the situation in which the Indian states are and why the initiatives are so much important. Yeah. Though I
And I have, yeah, I
understand your
have,
point also.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And the other question I have is actually, so in the session we discussed about the bowl, the capacity of the bowl is 250 ml, but generally the government of India guidelines says that the bowl can be 200 ml.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
the 250 ml and 5 meals for a child, I think is too big a quantity for the child to really consume and absorb.
Okay. 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 So yeah. Anybody else? Any other queries or anything?
Then this 250 milliliters bowl, is it from where we have taken this data?
Yeah,
This number?
the 250 ml, as far as I can remember, it is there in the lectures. But of course, if the government of India has any document advocating 200 ml, I'll go through it and I'll provide the source as well. Maybe in my next, I'll just keep in mind and I'll put those.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So, is there any other query related to this week or even the previous weeks? Even if there are any queries related to the previous weeks, you can jot them down in the portal, and I can also address them in the problem solving sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So we'll wrap up for today.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And next week we'll be discussing the topics. Yeah, so definitely there is a confusion regarding the week 8 and week 9 content, but let's see. We'll figure that out and we'll discuss accordingly. Okay. Okay. Thank you for joining. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, ma'am.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.